Imagine this, a quiet, almost forgotten library filled with stories no one seems to care about anymore. But one teen who has been laughed at for his love of books is about to change everything. What if I told you that the power of a single idea could reignite a town's love for reading and spark a movement that no one saw coming? Welcome to the story of Malik, a teenager from a small town who didn't just dream of change. He made it happen, using nothing but his passion and a broken laptop. This is a journey of determination, creativity, and proving that no idea is too small to make a huge impact. If you love inspiring stories about how one person can change the world, you're in the right place. But before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button if you're excited for this journey and subscribe for more uplifting stories. And hey, drop a comment below telling us about a book or idea that changed your life. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Now let's get started. Disclaimer. This story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of providing moral lessons, motivation, inspiration, and valuable learning experiences. While the characters and events are imagined, the themes explored in this video, including perseverance, community, and the power of ideas, are universal and meant to inspire and encourage viewers in their own journeys. Any resemblance to real-life events or individuals is purely coincidental. In a quiet Florida town, a teenage boy named Malik spends his afternoons tucked away in an old, forgotten library, reading books that most kids his age have long abandoned. Mocked by his classmates and overlooked by many, Malik holds tightly to his love for stories. But when an idea sparks inside him, a way to bring reading back to life for a new generation, he sets out to create something bigger than himself. Armed with determination, a second-hand laptop, and a dream no one else can see, Malik launches a digital community library app that stirs excitement across his town. What begins as a lonely project soon becomes a powerful movement, changing lives, rebuilding community spirit, and teaching everyone that sometimes, the greatest adventures start with a single page. Follow Malik's journey through trials, triumphs, and unexpected friendships, as he discovers that the power of a good story can transform not just one boy's life, but an entire town. The sun baked the cracked sidewalks of Mariners Cove, Florida, turning every step into a slow, sticky ordeal. A salty breeze rolled off the distant ocean, carrying the smell of fried food, suntan lotion, and the sharp tang of rust from the old fishing docks. Malik Johnson wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead as he crossed the town square, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved past the crowds of kids on bicycles and tourists juggling cameras and ice cream cones. No one paid him any mind. They rarely did. At the corner of Main Street and Pelican Lane stood the Mariners Public Library. It looked tired, its white paint peeling like sunburned skin, its shutters hanging at odd angles. A weather-beaten plaque above the door declared it had been founded in 1948. Most people passed it without a glance, heading for flashier attractions downtown. But Malik reached for the brass handle and pushed open the heavy wooden door with a groan. Inside, it was cooler, shaded from the punishing sun. The air smelled of old paper, polished wood, and something faintly musty. To Malik, it was the smell of possibility. He moved through the aisles with practiced ease, the dim light filtering through dusty windows casting long shadows across the carpet. Rows of forgotten stories lined the shelves, their spines cracked and faded. Malik loved the feel of a worn book in his hands, the way the pages turned with a whisper like someone sharing a secret. He settled into his usual corner, a lumpy old armchair beneath a tall, creaky window. From his backpack, he pulled out a stack of books he had been chipping away at all week. Ancient myths, the history of airships, biographies of inventors. To Malik, these stories were more vivid than anything happening outside. They were proof that ideas, even old ones, could still be alive. The library was almost always empty. Occasionally, an elderly couple would shuffle in looking for a large print novel, or a student would hurriedly grab a reference book. But most days it was just Malik and the caretaker, Mr. Hensley, a retired teacher who spent more time napping behind the front desk than checking out books. Around noon, Malik heard the heavy door swing open. He glanced up to see a group of kids from his school spill inside, laughing too loudly for a place like this. He recognized them instantly: Marcus, Deshaun, and Emily, the usual suspects. They were the ones who always found something to tease him about, whether it was his scuffed sneakers, his quiet voice, or most of all, his love of books. "There he is," Marcus said, smirking as he pointed at Malik. "Professor Malik, buried in the 1800s again." Deshaun laughed, nudging Emily. "Bet he is reading spells to make us disappear." Emily giggled. "Or reading a manual on how to be a dinosaur." Malik said nothing. He had learned that speaking back only fed the flames. Instead, he turned a page in his book with deliberate calm, willing himself to stay small, to disappear into the chair. The kids wandered off after a while, bored by his lack of reaction, leaving the door ajar so that hot air spilled into the cool room. Malik waited until the sound of their sneakers squeaked away down the street before he closed the book on his lap. His stomach twisted, but not with anger. It was something else. Sadness maybe. Not for himself, but for them. They could not see the treasure he held in his hands. He looked around the empty library, at the endless rows of dusty knowledge sitting untouched. It was a graveyard of stories, abandoned by a world moving too fast to notice. Even Mr. Hensley, snoozing behind the counter, seemed like a relic. Malik hugged the book to his chest. He wished he could show everyone what he saw. Not dead words, but living worlds. Not boredom, but adventure. An idea stirred at the edge of his mind, faint as a whisper through the cracks in the window pane. What if the library did not have to stay this way? What if the stories could leap off the shelves and into the hands of people who never thought to look? The thought fluttered away almost as quickly as it came. Malik shook his head. He was just a boy with an old backpack, a love for forgotten books, and a head full of dreams. But even the smallest ideas, he would later learn, could change everything. The evening sky over Mariner's Cove bruised into a deep purple, and the air thickened with the promise of rain. Malik pedaled his battered blue bike through the back streets, the chain rattling with every turn of the pedals. His backpack weighed heavily against his spine, filled with the latest treasures he had borrowed from the library. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long orange pools of light across the cracked pavement. By the time he reached home, the first fat raindrops had started to fall. Malik skidded to a stop outside the small, faded yellow house he shared with his mother and younger sister. A porch light buzzed weakly overhead, attracting a cloud of moths. Inside, the house smelled of cornbread and fried chicken. His mother, still in her work uniform from the diner, glanced up from the kitchen. "Library again?" she asked, not unkindly. Malik nodded, kicking off his shoes. "You are going to turn into a book one day," she said with a soft smile, shaking her head. After dinner, Malik retreated to his room. The storm outside gathered strength, lightning flashing in the distance like silent fireworks. He sat cross-legged on his bed, the books spread around him like a fortress. As the rain drummed against the window, Malik opened a small notebook, the pages already crowded with sketches and messy handwriting. At first, the idea had seemed impossible. Create something that would make people love the stories as much as he did? Oh, he had no money, no fancy equipment. Just an aging laptop that overheated if he ran it too long, and a few tech manuals he had checked out from the library. Still, the idea would not let him go. It buzzed in his mind, louder than the storm outside. He flipped to a fresh page and began to scribble, "App for kids. Books from library. Reading teams. Challenges. Points for reading different genres." He tapped his pencil against his lip. What would he call it? A gust of wind rattled the window. A single loose page fluttered off his bed and tumbled across the floor. Malik chased it down, laughing quietly at himself. When he picked it up, he noticed the corner of the page was smudged, as if the ink had blurred into the shape of a turning page. "Page turners," he whispered. He wrote the name at the top of the page in big, bold letters. Sounded right. Simple. Full of motion, full of energy. Full of hope. For the next 2 hours, Malik lost himself in planning. He thought about the features he would include: a digital library shelf, a system for kids to earn badges for finishing a series, weekly reading competitions between neighborhoods. He imagined leaderboards, colorful avatars, and pop-up book clubs that met at parks and coffee shops. By the time he set the notebook aside, the storm had passed, leaving only the soft hiss of water dripping from the roof. The house was silent. His mother and sister were already asleep. Malik stared at the cracked ceiling above his bed, the weight of possibility pressing down on him. He knew it would not be easy. He barely understood coding beyond a few beginner lessons he had read about online. He would need help, maybe from videos or forums. His laptop was slow and ancient. The town was small, and no one seemed particularly interested in technology beyond posting beach selfies. Still, he had something that none of the obstacles could touch. He had vision, and he had stories. The first spark had been lit, and though Malik could not see the whole fire yet, he felt its warmth beginning to spread. Tomorrow, he promised himself as his eyelids grew heavy. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Outside, the streets glistened with rainwater, and the library sat in darkness, silent and waiting. The next morning, Malik woke early, the idea of page turners pulling him out of bed before the alarm could buzz. He hurried through breakfast, scarfing down toast and orange juice, and bolted out the door with his backpack slung haphazardly over one shoulder. Instead of heading straight to the library, Malik biked to the town's only electronics thrift shop, tucked between a laundromat and an abandoned arcade. The bell over the door jingled weakly as he pushed inside. Mr. Franklin, the shop's owner, looked up from behind a counter cluttered with old radio parts and tangled wires. His thick glasses magnified his eyes, making him look a little like an owl. "Morning, Malik," he said. "Looking for something special?" Malik hesitated, then nodded. "Do you have any used laptops? Ones that still work?" Mr. Franklin chuckled, scratching his scruffy beard. "Define work," he said, then motioned toward a dusty corner where a few battered machines sat stacked like forgotten relics. "Take your pick. None of them are perfect, but if you are handy, you can make one dance." Malik sifted through the pile until he found a small, sturdy laptop with a cracked corner and a missing key. He opened it. The screen lit up faintly, blinking with a stubborn kind of life. "How much?" Malik asked, holding his breath. "For you, $20, Mr. Franklin said with a wink. Malik dug deep into his pockets, gathering crumpled bills and coins. He had just enough. He left the shop clutching the laptop to his chest like it was made of gold. Back at the library, Malik settled into his usual chair, plugging the laptop into a fraying extension cord. Mr. Hensley glanced up from the desk but said nothing, giving Malik a sleepy nod of approval. Malik spent the rest of the day buried in the digital world. He pored over beginner coding tutorials he had saved from the library computers, squinting at lines of code and confusing instructions. At first, nothing made sense. His fingers stumbled across the keyboard. Programs crashed. The screen froze. The laptop groaned under the weight of every new tab he opened. Frustration gnawed at him. Several times he wanted to slam the laptop shut and walk away. But each time he was tempted, he remembered the empty library shelves, the teasing laughter of Marcus and the others, and the feeling of holding a good story in his hands. Piece by piece, Malik began to understand. He learned how to design a simple login page. He figured out how to upload digital copies of books from the public domain. He created rough drawings of what the app screens would look like. Bright colors, easy buttons, little rewards for reading. Days blended into nights. Malik lost track of time, lost track of the world outside. The library became his second home more than ever, and Mr. Hensley, sensing something important was happening, made sure the doors stayed open late. One evening, as the last traces of sunlight faded from the windows, Malik managed to link two simple pages together in his app. It was clunky and slow, but when he clicked the Browse Books button and a list of titles appeared, he could not help but grin. He had done it. It was a tiny step. A broken, barely working draft. But it was real. He sat back, exhausted but exhilarated. The library around him seemed to hum with quiet approval, as if the very walls could feel the change coming. For the first time, Malik allowed himself to dream a little bigger. He imagined kids opening the app and laughing over books they had never considered reading. He imagined the library filling up again, not with tourists or noisy school kids looking for air conditioning, but with true readers, seekers of stories. It was a long way off. He had miles to go. But tonight he had built something from broken pieces. And that, he thought as he packed up his things, was a kind of magic all its own. The following week passed in a blur. Malik balanced school, chores, and sneaking every free minute he could to work on page-turners. He stayed late at the library after classes, sipping lukewarm vending machine coffee, his eyes burning from staring at the tiny laptop screen. Slowly the app began to take shape. The homepage displayed colorful categories like adventure, science, myths, and history. Each time a user finished a book, a bright badge would appear, celebrating their progress. Malik even added a local leaderboard that ranked readers by points earned, hoping a little competition would ignite excitement. Yet something gnawed at him. Building the app was one thing. Getting people to care was another. He knew the kids at school. They cared about the latest videos, flashy trends, and who posted what on social media. Not about dusty books or a homemade app built by the quiet boy no one listened to. One afternoon, as he scrolled through announcements on the school website during computer lab, a small headline caught his eye. Open mic assembly, share your project. It was scheduled for the end of the month. Students could present anything they were passionate about, whether it was a science fair experiment, a piece of art, or a new idea. Malik's stomach twisted into knots. The thought of standing in front of the whole school made his palms sweat. He remembered too well the teasing, the sideways glances. But he also remembered the empty library shelves, the abandoned chairs, and the stories gathering dust. He clicked register before he could talk himself out of it. The following days were harder than he had imagined. Malik practiced explaining page turners out loud, stumbling over his words. He made notes, crossed them out, rewrote them. He tried recording himself speaking and cringed at how shaky his voice sounded. At school, word about the assembly buzzed through the halls. Most students were excited to see their friends show off dance routines, rap performances, or science projects with explosions. Malik overheard Marcus talking about building a bottle rocket. Emily planned to paint a giant mural. No one mentioned anything about reading. On the day of the assembly, Malik sat in the back of the auditorium, heart hammering against his ribs. His name was buried low on the list, squeezed in between louder, flashier acts. He watched as students took the stage one by one, the crowd cheering for every jump, every joke, every bright, impressive moment. When the announcer finally called, "Next up, Malik Johnson," with something called page turners, the room quieted, not out of anticipation but confusion. Malik stood slowly, legs trembling. He carried his laptop under one arm and made his way to the stage, the overhead lights blinding him. He cleared his throat, willing his voice to work. "Hi," he began, the microphone squealing slightly. "I am Malik, and I love books." A few muffled giggles floated up from the crowd. "I know that sounds old-fashioned," he continued, forcing a small smile. "But books have stories, and stories are how we connect to each other. I wanted to find a way to make books exciting again, especially for kids who think reading is boring or too hard." He opened the laptop and turned it toward the crowd, the large screen behind him projecting the simple, colorful homepage he had built. "This is Page Turners," Malik said, his voice growing a little stronger. "It is an app where you can find free books from our own town library, compete in reading challenges with friends, and unlock badges for trying new genres. Adventure, mystery, sports, comics, whatever you like." The room stayed quiet, but not in a bad way. People were listening. "You do not have to be the fastest reader. You do not have to love every book. But if you try," Malik said, "you might find something that stays with you forever. Just like the stories I found." For a heartbeat, he stood there in silence, the stage lights warming his face. Then someone clapped. One person. Then another. Then more. It was not thunderous, it was not deafening, but it was real. Malik smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. He bowed his head slightly and walked off stage, his heart pounding, but this time with something other than fear. Hope. As he slipped back into his seat, Emily nudged Marcus and whispered something. For once, Marcus did not laugh. He just nodded thoughtfully. Maybe, Malik thought, just maybe, the stories were starting to stir. In the days after the assembly, a quiet ripple spread through Mariners Cove Middle School. Malik noticed it first in the glances he caught in the hallway. They were not the mocking looks he was used to. They were curious, even thoughtful. A few kids he barely knew stopped in between classes to ask shy questions. "Hey Malik, can I really find comic books on that app? Are there any scary stories? Do you have sports biographies?" Malik answered each question with a growing confidence. The Page Turners app was still rough, but it was real, and now it had something more precious than polish. It had momentum. At the library, Mr. Hensley, who rarely showed much emotion beyond mild surprise, beamed proudly whenever Malik came in. Together, they created a small poster to hang by the front door. "Join Page Turners, explore, compete, discover." Malik spent evenings uploading more free books, sorting them into new categories and tweaking the app's design. He created colorful badges shaped like anchors, dolphins, and palm trees, tying them to the town's coastal spirit. He even added a secret achievement called Storm Chaser, unlocked by reading 5 adventure novels in a month. Word spread beyond the school. Parents heard about it through their kids and began downloading Page Turners onto their phones and tablets. Some teachers encouraged students to use it for independent reading. Even the town's small local paper ran a short article about the teen bringing books to life, complete with a blurry photo of Malik standing proudly in front of the library. Then, one Saturday morning, Malik arrived at the library to find something he could hardly believe. The building, usually so quiet you could hear a page turn from across the room, buzzed with noise. Kids crowded around the front desk, waving library cards and asking about joining Page Turners. Parents chatted near the windows, sipping coffee from paper cups. Mr. Hensley looked overwhelmed but delighted, scribbling notes and helping newcomers log into the app. Malik stood frozen for a moment, his backpack still hanging from one shoulder. This was it. This was the dream. He moved through the crowd, answering questions, helping kids download the app, recommending books. Some kids asked for the most popular titles. Others wanted something no one else would think to read. Malik made suggestions carefully, remembering the thrill of finding an unexpected favorite buried deep on a dusty shelf. By noon, the library's reading room was full. Groups of kids sat cross-legged on the carpet, flipping through books or swapping recommendations. Laughter echoed off the high ceilings. Even the air seemed lighter, fresher. Mr. Hensley called Malik over and clapped a hand gently on his shoulder. "Looks like you did it, son," he said, his voice thick. Malik smiled, a little dazed. "It is not just me," he said, glancing around at the bustling room. "It is the stories. They were always here. They just needed someone to listen." That night, Malik lay awake in bed, too wired to sleep. He thought about how far he had come from the boy who once hid behind old books, too afraid to speak up. He thought about page-turners, about the kids who were finding magic in words just like he had. He knew it was only the beginning. There were bugs to fix, features to add, more challenges to create. He dreamed of expanding the app to other towns, maybe even one day across the whole state, connecting kids who had never thought of themselves as readers before. For now, though, he allowed himself a moment to simply be proud. He had taken a broken laptop, a dusty library, and an idea no one believed in. And he had turned the page. The following weeks became a season of growth that Malik could scarcely have imagined when he first scribbled ideas in his battered notebook. Page-turners exploded across Mariner's Cove like a high tide, pulling in more kids, more parents, and even teachers who had once sighed about how little their students wanted to read. The library expanded its hours to keep up with the sudden traffic. Mr. Hensley applied for a grant from the county's cultural council, and to everyone's amazement, they received it. With the funds, the library bought new books, refreshed the furniture, and even set up a few used computers so kids without devices could still join the page-turners community. It was not long before the principal called Malik into his office. At first, Malik's nerves twisted painfully. He sat stiffly in the chair, gripping the strap of his backpack until his knuckles turned white. But Principal Hartley just smiled, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "Malik, I want you to know," she said, "you have not just built an app. You have sparked something bigger. Literacy rates are climbing. Kids are reading on their own again. Some of them are even writing their own stories." She slid a crisp certificate across the desk toward him. It was an invitation to represent Mariner's Cove at the Florida Youth Innovation Conference in Tallahassee, a gathering of young minds building technology, art, and community change. Malik could hardly speak. He stared at the gold-embossed words as if they might vanish. "Think about it," Principal Hartley said. "It is a chance to show the world what you have started here." As he biked home that afternoon, the sun setting in molten colors across the marsh, Malik felt the weight of possibility all around him. What had begun as a lonely, stubborn dream was now part of something bigger, something living and breathing. In the evenings, he found himself approached by more and more kids who wanted to join page-turners, not just as readers but as creators. Jasmine and Caleb, two 8th graders he barely knew before, suggested making a Story Seeds corner where kids could write and share their own short stories. Malik loved the idea and added the section to the next update. Meanwhile, Marcus, the same Marcus who once taunted Malik in the library, started stopping by the reading lounge after school. At first, he pretended it was just for the free Wi-Fi. But one day Malik caught him tucked behind a bookshelf, nose deep in a sci-fi novel. When their eyes met, Marcus just shrugged awkwardly and grinned. "Not bad," he muttered. Malik grinned back. No teasing. No judgment. Just a shared understanding. It was not just the library either. Across Mariner's Cove, little changes appeared like seashells after a high tide. Murals of book covers were painted on empty alley walls. A coffee shop started a Saturday morning pages and pastries club for kids and parents. Even the beachside boardwalk hosted a story walk, posting laminated pages of picture books along the trail for families to read as they strolled. Everywhere Malik went, he saw evidence that page-turners was more than an app. It was a movement. It was kids remembering that they were explorers, adventurers, dreamers. He thought often about the day he stood on the assembly stage, voice trembling, believing he might be laughed off before he could even explain. How close he had come to letting fear win. How easy it would have been to stay silent. Instead, he had spoken. And because he did, he had changed something, not just in himself but in his town. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the salty Florida breeze rattled his window, Malik would open page-turners on his own phone. He would scroll through the leaderboards, see the colorful badges kids had unlocked, and smile to himself. There was still so much more to build. So many new pages to turn. The morning of the Florida Youth Innovation Conference arrived clear and warm, the kind of spring day that made the air smell faintly of salt and blooming jasmine. Malik stood outside the Mariners Cove bus station, dressed in his best collared shirt and pressed khakis, clutching his backpack tightly. Mr. Hensley was there to see him off, along with Principal Hartley and a few friends from school who had woken early to wish him good luck. Even Marcus showed up, tossing a friendly salute Malik's way. "You are gonna do great," Jasmine said, handing him a folded piece of paper. "In case you need some last-minute courage." Malik tucked it carefully into his backpack, touched beyond words. The bus rumbled to life, and Malik found a window seat, waving to his little group until they disappeared around the corner. As the miles slipped by, the nervousness in his chest twisted tighter. Tallahassee was hours away. The city would be bigger, louder, full of kids who had probably built robots, coded full games, launched startups. What if Page Turner's was too simple? Too small? But he thought of the library packed with kids. The murals, the story walk, the way even Marcus had found a new love for reading. Page Turner's was not just a project. It was proof that a simple idea, fueled by passion, could ripple out and change a whole community. When Malik arrived at the conference center, it felt like stepping into another world. Bright banners floated from the ceilings. Hundreds of teens bustled around booths filled with holograms, solar panels, homemade drones, and dazzling art projects. Malik found his assigned table, unrolled his poster board, and carefully set up his laptop. The Page Turner's logo, a simple anchor wrapped around an open book, gleamed from the screen. Judges began making their rounds, clipboards in hand. Some stopped briefly at his booth, nodding politely before moving on. But others stayed longer, listening as Malik explained how the app worked, how it tied into his town's culture, how it encouraged creativity and community. One woman, a representative from a statewide literacy foundation, asked detailed questions about how he built momentum at his school. A man from a nonprofit tech incubator scribbled down notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You say you coded this all yourself?" he asked. "Yes," Malik said, feeling the weight of every late night, every frustrating glitch, every small victory. As the afternoon wore on, he grew more comfortable. More kids and adults stopped by. Some asked about expanding Page Turners to other libraries. Others wanted to know if Malik planned to add audiobooks, language translations, or new challenges. By the time the final bell rang to announce the award ceremony, Malik felt like he had already won. He had been heard. The conference organizers gathered everyone into a large hall draped in blue and gold. Lights flashed. Music blared. Students leaned forward eagerly as the announcer read out the winners in each category. When they got to Best Community Impact, Malik barely heard his own name called. It floated above him, unreal. He stumbled to the stage amid a roar of clapping and cheers, blinking against the bright lights. Someone pressed a heavy glass award into his hands. It caught the light and sent tiny rainbows dancing across the stage. Standing there, Malik thought of the old library room with its cracked leather chairs. Of the kids curled up on the carpet, laughing over new stories. Of himself, sitting alone all those afternoons, wondering if it mattered. It had. It did. After the ceremony, reporters snapped photos and asked for short interviews. Other students crowded around him, peppering him with questions. Malik answered them with a quiet pride, always careful to mention the library, Mr. Hensley, and the people of Mariners Cove who had believed in a boy with a stubborn dream. That night, on the bus ride home, Malik sat back and watched the moonlight slip across the highway. He pulled Jasmine's folded note from his backpack and opened it. In her careful handwriting it read, "Remember, the best stories never end. They just begin again in new hands." Malik smiled, tucking the note safely away. The story of Page Turner's had only just begun, and so had his. The end. Here are the 7 moral lessons drawn from the story. 1. Believe in your ideas even when others doubt you. At the beginning of the story, Malik faces mockery and dismissal for his love of old books and libraries. Many around him see his passion as outdated or unimportant. Yet Malik holds firm to his belief that reading still matters and that stories have the power to change lives. His commitment to his idea, even when no one else understood, allowed him to create something that would eventually inspire an entire community. Lesson: true innovation often begins with a solitary vision. If you believe in the value of what you are building, stay committed. Others may not understand at first, but perseverance can turn a lonely idea into a movement. 2. Small beginnings can lead to big changes. Page Turner started with Malik alone, using an old laptop in a nearly empty library. There were no big investors, no advertisements, no powerful endorsements. It was just one boy with a dream and a lot of late nights. Yet from this small beginning, a wave of change spread across Mariner's Cove. Libraries came back to life, students fell in love with reading again, and even local businesses joined the movement. Lesson: do not underestimate small starts. Every meaningful change in the world begins with one step, one idea, or one brave person willing to act. 3. Community grows when you build with others in mind. Malik did not build page turners just for himself. He built it with his classmates, younger children, and struggling readers in mind. He thought about what would make reading exciting for them: competitions, badges, and the joy of discovering stories. His focus on serving others made the app genuinely connect with people's lives. Lesson: true success comes when your work uplifts others. When you create solutions with the needs of your community at heart, your impact becomes much larger and more lasting. 4. Courage is speaking when it is hard. One of the pivotal moments in the story is when Malik decides to present page turners at the school assembly. Fear nearly silences him. He could have easily stayed quiet, protecting himself from potential embarrassment. But he finds the courage to speak, trembling but determined. Because of that moment of bravery, his entire journey changes course. Lesson: courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of fear. Speaking up for your ideas, your passions, and your dreams can open doors you never imagined. 5. Kindness and support make a difference. Throughout Malik's journey, small acts of kindness help fuel his progress. Mr. Hensley gives him a safe place to work. Principal Hartley encourages him when she sees his potential. Jasmine gives him a handwritten note of encouragement. These gestures, though simple, act as lifelines when Malik's confidence wavers. Lesson: support from even one person can make a profound difference in someone's life. A kind word, a listening ear, or a small act of belief can push someone to achieve greatness. 6. Transformation is possible even for skeptics. Marcus, one of Malik's early tormentors, undergoes a quiet but important transformation. By the end of the story, Marcus not only stops mocking Malik but becomes a silent participant in the reading movement. This shift shows that even those who seem dismissive or hostile can change when given the chance to see something differently. Lesson: people are capable of growth. Never assume that someone will always be defined by their worst moments. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective or a new opportunity to bring out their best. 7. The power of stories is timeless. At its heart, Malik's story is a tribute to storytelling itself. Despite new technologies and distractions, stories remain a core part of what connects people across generations and communities. Through page turners, Malik shows that stories are not relics of the past, they are bridges to the future. Lesson: no matter how much the world changes, the need for stories will endure. They teach us, unite us, and inspire us. Embracing the power of stories can help preserve culture, build empathy, and spark new dreams. Each of these lessons is woven naturally into Malik's journey and reflects deep truths about innovation, courage, community, and human connection. And there you have it, the story of Malik, a young dreamer who turned an old library into a spark for change and showed us all that no idea is ever too small to make a difference. His journey reminds us that with perseverance, creativity, and a little courage, we can transform the world around us, one story at a time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If this story inspired you, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with someone who might need a little motivation today. And if you're looking for more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We've got even more inspiring content coming your way. Feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you thought about the story, or maybe share how you've been inspired to create something of your own. Thanks again for being here, and remember, the best stories are still waiting to be written. See you in the next video.